Mm.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining this episode of Cults and Overcoming. So, my guest today is someone that was actually born and grew up into Restoration City, aka Straightway. His dad was actually second in command for quite a few years, and he is here to tell some of that story and some of the crazy things that went on during his family's time there. So, I'm going to go ahead and welcome Stefan. Hello.
Howdy.
How's it going?
Oh, good. Yeah. I always think about, I mean, second in command is the only, I say that too. It's like the only best way to describe it. But I wish they almost had given him a title just so it would have been easier to be like, tell him like he was the second chosen brotherhood man or something. So it's like,
I kind of think of him more as like a co-pastor.
Yeah.
More because he preached a lot, and still to this day, I think he's one of the best preachers. I know a lot of people have ill will towards him and stuff, and there's a lot of background stuff that has gone on, but he's still today one of the best speakers I've ever heard. He had a very motivating way of preaching.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I wonder. I guess I'd have to check if like he technically was associate pastor. Maybe he was. So maybe I should have just been saying that all along. The associate pastor.
I mean, associate pastor, co-pastor, second in command. You pretty much, like I said, were born into this environment and everything. So you didn't really know anything different until you left, or did y'all start at some point going to public school?
Yeah, from my memory, like the way I describe it to people now is like, I think we were a cult, but we didn't have like old doctrines that we had to like keep up or anything like that. Like I've been watching on Hulu, they've got Under the Banner of Heaven, the new show about the fundamentalist Mormon murders that happened. It's a great book, and the show's been pretty good so far. But I feel like with that kind of stuff, there was always like people who were being like, oh, let's go back to the real, and there'll be a lot of control in that. But with us, it was kind of more like the whims. Like it kind of started out like it still is, and it was always, I would say, conservative, but I think it started out as like what you would expect from a group like that, where it's like incredibly strict, and that also led to like what you would expect, where they would be doing homeschooling. And I homeschooled through fourth grade, and I have like no memory at all of it. I do remember there was a time early on where they were trying to actually do school at the place, like, and I guess they just kind of gave up. Like I guess if we were more committed to something like that, then it would have stayed on. But after a while, they're like, oh, we don't want to hang out with our children 24/7. So yeah, we'll let them go to the evil public school, but maybe they'll bring our ways there or something like that. So I didn't go to public school until 8th grade, but in 5th through 7th grade, I went to this place called St. Thomas, which was a private school, but like not what you would think, like super preppy. It was very small. It was Episcopal church, and I remember distinctly going there in 5th grade, and there was this threat of like, if I don't do good there, I'm going to be sent to public school, and public school is this den of fire that will devour me or something. And so I always had that hanging over my head. But I remember like really liking being at St. Thomas after I started to get like used to it, because I was like, oh, yeah, this homework thing. I remember struggling for a while, but then eventually I got used to it. And I feel like when that closed down, for a lot of reasons, there's a whole story there that would be like its own podcast probably, about like this guy who like his name was Mr. Weiner, and he like gave away all these, like basically gave away a bunch of scholarships, and they're like, hey, that's great and all, but we don't get like money from the government or anything. We actually have to get money to stay on. And then like 2 years later, it was done. So and he like disappeared like halfway through my 5th grade year, so that was like weird. But all that to say, I went to public school in 8th grade, and after hearing all this time about like public school is like this den of iniquity that's going to destroy you, it's like I'm in 8th grade. I shouldn't even know what iniquity is, but I still don't even really know what iniquity is. It's kind of like sin, but not sin. But yeah.
Something just fell. Sorry. Keep going.
Oh, I think some iniquity got in there, but
the Holy Spirit.
Where was it? Oh, 8th grade. When I got to 8th grade, like after 3 years of St. Thomas, where they like actually had teachers like stay on you and make good. Public school, 8th grade through high school was easy as hell. I was like, what? This was this den of sin of vipers that I have to fight against. Like, not saying I didn't like have this mindset of like, I almost had this mindset. I don't know if it was like I'm better than them mindset. I think that's almost like a default growing up at Straightway, but or Restoration City. And but like not in a sense of like I'm a better person than you. I'm just like, oh, I have the truth. And that's great. And hey, maybe you can too. It's so simple. We're right down the road. Come on. But yeah, that was a long-winded answer to that really small question. But yes, I did go to public school eventually, and I think that was just a long road from being like extremely controlling to like I'm sure we're going to discuss a lot. Excuse me. The idea that like a lot of rules changed whenever like it inconvenienced David, or it was like, I bet for him, he's like, he had all those children. He was like, oh, I can't. I got to send some of them on the Straightway team, and then the rest of them go to school. I can't keep any of them here. I've got too much partying to do. Come on.
Oh my gosh, that's too funny. Yeah. So you finally start going to public school. Before you went to public school, did you kind of think it was normal the way that we were growing up and everything? And
yeah, well, I think it was not normal. I think it was more better. Like we have a better thing going here. So like people who have normal lives, I felt bad for them. It was like, and I do think there were aspects like, and at least when I was really young, when I like just was not aware of so many things. But I think there was, I think like growing up in a field with just like miles of random thing that you can explore, and always having access to friends like all the time, I still to this day, I'm like, I see people who like grew up in the suburbs, and I'm like, it does not even compute what this, I don't even like, you could tell me, like, I still don't even know really what the suburbs like technically are. Like I know, but I don't know. Like I'm like, I don't have like a concept of like what that even looks like. And just the idea of like what you would have to like drive a couple miles to go see someone, like or you'd have to like just the people on your street, and that's about it. If you like that guy, like to this day, like in Austin, there's so many people who ride bikes, but I could never like I haven't even thought about like riding a bike again, because I was so spoiled just having like limitless place to like ride bikes everywhere, that kind of stuff. So like there was those kind of aspects kind of build to the idea of like this is like something better, so it was easier to believe it as a youth, for sure, in my mind. But I also was not one of the kids that like got targeted as like a bad kid, which the more and more I hear stories like that, where it's just like even in youth, like there would just be some people who like got praised for some reason, and then other people who got like chastised all the time, like the go-to target pretty much. And it was always just kind of a random thing. Like maybe if I had accidentally like stubbed David's toe or something one day, like I would have been a target for life.
So your dad is second in command and everything. How did that play in the aspect of y'all being raised and stuff? Do you remember like getting preferential, is that how you say that word? Treatment?
I mean, I think undeniably yes. Like the fact that we had like we lived in a trailer like most of the people, but we lived right next to David. And then when he moved into his house, we moved into his trailer that was like kind of up converted a lot. So to where it was, to where it was basically a house compared to the rest of the things. So, I mean, just little stuff like that. It was like, we were like just below everything. And then we would have like, I won't say names, but we literally have like housekeepers, like people who'd come by like week to week to like clean the trailer.
Oh,
which is like,
I remember going over there and babysitting y'all and cleaning y'all's
Yeah.
house. You were more quiet. Your sisters were a little more rowdy. They were younger. And then Wes, I don't know, he just kind of stayed to himself when y'all were younger. I'm talking about like when we had
yeah.
Wait, do you remember any of us babysitting y'all?
I mean, I have vague memories. In fact, I know I don't remember who it was. I mean, I kind of can guess just based on the limited pool of people who would have like babysit. But I remember one time just being like, I guess I was like one of the people who must have been like just a teenager at best, was like, no, you can't do something. I remember just being like so like disappointed, but like I didn't like lash out. I decided I was gonna run away. And so I went down the road, past whatever the houses are over there, but I barely got a mile, and then I just changed my mind. Like, oh, this is too hard.
Yeah, this is just too much. We're in the middle of a cow pasture here. That might take quite a while to run away.
Yeah, no kidding. That's probably like one of the good things of living out there is like, good and bad. It's like literally, I couldn't run away. Like I couldn't be as a child, be like get lost. Like even if you got lost in like the woods, there wasn't that much wood. You know, you probably would be found, hopefully. But yeah, but also if you wanted to like legitimately leave, it was pretty hard. You know, certainly you'd have to like plan it out decently. So that's and also you'd be chastised for the rest of your life and condemned to hell. So
yeah, you're going straight to Hades, you know.
Yep.
You're living in this environment. Your dad is preaching a lot. He's very well into the church aspect of everything, and your older brother is also starts traveling on the straightway team and stuff. And so there's quite a few things that happened. There's a major event that did happen with your family, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But they're all along the way. So just to remind everybody, this is a part rehab facility. So people also come here to get off drugs and alcohol and whatever life controlling issue they have. So your parents originally came there. They were not married. They went through the program part. They met each other and ended up getting married and having you guys. And so during this time, I mean, your parents were, they were sober during this whole time, right? I mean, pretty much, I think.
Yeah, I mean, up until the change, but yeah, I have no memory of before it became acceptable to drink again, them doing anything like that.
Yeah, you have these people that are these ex-alcoholics and stuff, and then they start something, the freedom of the spirit, which we've talked about before, and they were able to start drinking again. I don't know if because in the Bible it says Jesus turned water into wine or what, but somewhere along the way that was allowed to happen. And so it started originally with the pastor and the elders, and because my dad at the time, he became a deacon and then an elder. And my mom has told us stories of them like hiding it from us, like in their bedroom and stuff. And she has some kind of funny stories, but yeah, so they would just kind of hide it from us before the rest of the congregation or kids really knew about it. So they started really getting into this, and then finally the rest of the congregation finds out. People start drinking again. Not everyone did, but some people did. And so you have these people who were sober for probably quite a few years, and then all of a sudden you're allowed to do this. And we can go to the day where a real tragedy occurs within your family. I mean, and it's basically also within the church, because your dad was such a prominent member within the church as well. So do you want to go to the day that you and your brother you wake up in the morning and you find this out?
Sure. I think I'll say a little before that too, is that uh, I remember distinctly, like growing up, the idea of drinking at all was just like frowned upon as like basically a sin. Um,
Yeah.
and so once it started happening, you know, I felt really uncomfortable, being like, wait, what the heck? What the heck? uh,
Yeah.
being like very like this doesn't feel right. And there was multiple times where my dad would come home either blackout drunk, basically, like not like my mom would have driven home in those cases, but um but or other times where he was definitely not sober and he was like just kind of being silly, and I would just be like, I don't feel good about this, and he would, and so I definitely, before this all happened, was like, there's something just feels off here. Uh but then it was New Year's Eve 2005, like literally like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. in the morning. I remember I got a call from my mom and being like, hey, can you check if your dad's just asleep in the truck or something out in the parking lot? And so I was like, okay, because they were at a party that was like a party from the company that he worked at, because he still is, but he was a salesman for a pool company. And I went out, and there was nothing, no car in the lot at all. And it was just like the instant that I just felt something was like really wrong. I was like it was like like the stereotype, like it felt like a movie or something. I was like, okay, this feels wrong. And so at some point, me and my brother got into another vehicle and we went looking for him, and we couldn't find him anywhere in the area because they lived out the party was out in Sealy, which is closer to Houston. And so we're just driving out, just like having no like clue of like where to look, what to do. And there was even this weird moment that like we like picked up like a hitchhiker or something. And it was
Really?
like we like took this guy to his house. It was like he was like this guy who was just like I remember him being like, bless you, you'll find your father or something. I was like, I can't believe we did that, but like, hey. Yeah. So eventually we end up going to the boss's house, and there's all these people gathered around and just trying to figure out where he was or whatever. And I remember very distinctly like going into the house, and all these party decorations were still up, and like, but everyone was super sad. I was like, oh, this is very like cinematic moment, I guess. But I guess in my mind, I was like, I don't know if I assumed he was like dead or something, but like I definitely like felt like something bad must have happened. And then we found out, so I don't know how they found out, but he was already like in the hospital at that point, because when we drove to the hospital in Houston, and somewhere along the line we found out that he had crashed into uh, a car, like straight on, basically. Like I guess he went into the wrong lane, and he was super wasted, so he probably like just blacked out. And why he drove home, he was driving home basically because he was going to do work the next day, which is like, oh my goodness, like there's a lot of things about that. I'm just like, well, of course, obviously you shouldn't have been driving, but also like you can like just you can just hammer down and then just go to work the next day. That's crazy, everything about it was like, it just felt like it was a confirmation of like my fears. But also like a side story to that's a little bit more humorous was that summer before, I remember like we would go to this condo in Galveston, which I guess was owned by the church. And I don't know who all got to use it, but we got to use it a decent amount. So I remember going there plenty of times, which I'm sure was another like bonus, being a second thing or whatever. But there was always a lot of alcohol there at a certain point. And so I remember one day being like, deciding, I was like, what, this was 2005. So I was either 15, maybe 16. No. Yeah, I think I was 15. And I decided, I was like, I'm gonna like just drink all this. So I drank a ton of it, and I got like very, like, I don't know how drunk I was in retrospect, but like
Was that
it,
just
it
by
felt
your, was that just by yourself?
yeah, I was like completely in secret. And I guess I had this like backwards idea of like, I'm gonna like see what all the fuss is about, slash I don't want them to keep doing this. So it's like two
Mm,
birds with one stone, I guess.
mm,
So I ended up getting like they're certainly more drunk than ever. Like I think by that point I probably had like maybe one or two like sips of something, or maybe one beer just to try it out or something. And that's
mm.
it. And so I was just like, whoa, I'm experiencing this. And I remember just feel after a while just feeling so guilty. So what I did was I went to the front desk of this condo place and said, I'm drunk. Turn me in.
What?
Yeah. Like I literally was like, I'm a bad person or something. So I was like,
Oh my God.
so eventually they figured out enough to lead me back to the condo. And so obviously my dad was like, there was no hiding what happened at this point. It was like, what the heck? And then the next day I was like super sick. And so I had, I guess, my first hangover of my life.
Mm,
Um, so I was throwing up and things like that. So I wasn't feeling that great. But I think like me and my dad kind of like had a heart to heart, and I was like, I did it because I didn't want you to keep doing it.
oh,
Uh, and he was like, I'm never gonna do it again or something like that. And
oh,
that ended up not being the case,
yeah.
because then just later that year this whole accident thing happened. So getting to the
Mm,
hospital and back on New Year's Eve, and I don't remember the exact order of events, but eventually somehow we found out about the crash into the car, and then we found out that somebody had died in the other car. So my dad had killed someone.
yeah.
and and we remember getting to the hospital, and I always wonder how much of this is like the actual memory or just like my memory like reconstructing things. But I remember like going to this room with all these people like in beds and like in these emergency situations,
Mm,
and my dad was kind of like right in the middle for some reason, so it almost felt like they were waiting for us. Like, but I always wonder if my mind like I just like thought he was in the middle but he really wasn't or something. But in any case, that's my memory. And um going up to him and like remember him just kind of waking up a little bit, and like I guess he didn't really understand, but like David was there, and like and a lot of people were there, um and I got the
how,
sense that like, yeah, go ahead.
how old were you when this happened?
So I must have been 16 at this point.
Real quick, you guys are in the hospital and everything, and so he didn't realize what had happened, right? At that
No.
point, he didn't realize I was in an accident and all this other stuff had happened as well.
Well, he seems to say that he has like memories of the accident, but I always wonder if that was like like a more like a vision than like actually remembering it. But like he says he remembers things like someone like pulling him out of the car or something like that. So
Jeez,
but I'm sure at that moment when he's in the hospital, he was like had like was unable to like gather exactly what was happening.
man.
It definitely felt like he wasn't.
Mm, yeah. So after
And
this,
yeah, he was. Oh, and to be clear, he was very injured too. Like yeah,
yeah,
so
he was.
yeah, so that's an important fact to bring up. Is like, yeah, he did not come out of this unscathed either.
Mm,
As far as obviously the other side of it got way worse as far as a lot of reasons, but
mhm,
he
for
certainly
sure.
suffered.
Yeah, for sure. So after this had happened, he's in the hospital and everything, and the events that followed. Do you want to kind of talk about that? Kind of what after he gets out of the hospital and everything. What I'm trying to remember if how long. I think they waited a little while till they told the church the extent of everything, because we knew. I remember getting a phone call to like go to the Blue Chapel immediately, and we were going to be praying because he was in the hospital.
Yeah,
That's kind of, and that he had been in an accident, but they didn't tell us yet the full details of what really had happened. So
yeah.
he had, how many people were in the other car? It was three, right? or something?
I think so. I mean, it might have been more.
So he had killed one lady and then injured the rest. And I mean, just really sad. So they tell us all to go there. I mean, that's kind of the extent that we knew. And then I believe it was a few months, because I remember having, at that time was during the time that we would have a couple of those really big meetings that they would have this in the Blue Chapel.
Yeah.
And they would, I think you may have been too young at that point, but they would like almost, they may have locked the door. I don't know. And they would have everybody in there. And because I remember your dad was at one or two of those, because he was in a wheelchair in one of them. And they were telling us some of what happened. I mean, he was really honest, but not really honest at that point.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. Like he was like saying what happened, but I don't think we still knew in full detail. Okay, this man is about to go to prison.
No, from my memory, that fact was not told to most until like very close to when he was going to go to prison. Like I remember having like a service basically. Like I don't believe it was a Sunday service. I feel like it was like some sort of like special edition of of our service where he told people that, and a lot of people were like, "What?"
Yeah, I remember that service.
Yeah. So and yeah, and I always felt kind of weird about that. So I had to like keep this weird secret where like everybody knew about the accident, and I think a lot of people knew about the alcohol part of it. Maybe. I don't know.
Think we knew the full. I don't think some people knew the full story of that yet.
Yeah.
Because I do remember thinking in that service, wow, because he was very honest in that service. He told everything. I do remember that part, because I remember thinking, oh my God, I can't believe he's actually being this honest right now.
Yeah.
So there was a whole trial and everything after that occurred, right?
Well, it was more of a plea accepted thing. So the only time I was ever in court was one day, and that was the day where he was like accepting it. In fact, it was this wild sequence of events that happened around that time. So it was like that service that we talked about happened probably that week. He's like, or the week before maybe, where he's like, oh, by the way, I'm going to prison and my sentence is going to be 12 years, which I didn't know that until till very soon before that happened. My assumption was that like I somewhere along the line there was this like idea that like the minimum sentence for something of this situation was 6 months. And so in my mind it was like, well, my dad's, you know, a divine person and he's a good person, so obviously good people get the minimum sentence, right? So that was my like just thought for a long time. It's just like, well, you know, it might be a little bit of a struggle, but we'll get through it. God prevails, as it always does. And I went to this camp in LA. I went to my only time I ever went to a film camp was in this LA thing that I went to in 2007, in August of 2007. I think it was the beginning of August 2007. And so I went to that, and that's its own story. That was a wild thing, but I came back from that, and you know, I remember being like getting home. I was pulled into the room and to my dad's room, and that's when he told me that the sentence was 12 years. And I don't know if I was stunned as much as it was more than stunned, but it was not quite stunned. It was like this feeling of like, wow, my life is different now. Like nothing's ever going to be the same. You know, it's just like I have no choice in the matter, I guess. It was just like this weird like moment of you know, I being like, wow, I guess Johnny Law doesn't recognize my dad's ranking here. I guess that doesn't matter. Yeah, you know.
That's not how going to prison works.
Which I didn't know. But so I found out about that. Then we have like the time where everyone finally knows about it. So like there was just like almost 2 years of not me not being able to tell anybody really what exactly happened. And you know, it in retrospect, like that's just another very culty thing of like the fact that it was a secret. Like, of course they kept it a secret, not because they were like protecting like him, they were protecting themselves.
Oh,
And
100%. Yeah.
yeah, and that's like they did all these shenanigans where like they changed like his like they removed him from the board, but they still kept him like doing exactly the same things. So it's like nothing that came out of that could be like traced to them or something. So a lot of stuff like that was happening. And so then we're waiting for I almost want to go to a calendar real quick to be like, I could probably get the exact dates here if I could go to the past. But basically, it was like the weekend before school started, my senior year of high school. What was going to happen was my dad was going to have this sentencing, and then he was going to go to prison, and then I was going to go to school to like whatever. So what ended up happening was wild. Was the day before, we were like having like a meal at Whataburger. It almost felt like a last meal. And our grandmother was living with us for a while. And then she moved into a house in the next city over. But she was like basically like still like with us pretty closely. And she was supposed to be there with us. And so she was in her 80s at that point. And I remember just being like, someone saying like, where's grandma? That we haven't heard from her. There was these cops that were like eating lunch or whatever meal this was, heard that, pulled my dad out, and we're like, what is going on here? Like, is he in double trouble or something? What is going on? And then I just remember him coming back in and being like, we have to go home now. I mean, like, oh my goodness. And then it just like somewhere along the road way home, I was just like, I bet this has something to do with grandma. So we get home, and he tells us that she had died in a car wreck that day, and like on the way back from a hospital visit, she was coming back to us, and then she got in a car wreck and died.
That's wow.
So
random.
Yeah, and this is the day before the sentencing. So like, we were like, I remember my dad very much saying, "This is a nightmare." And it really felt like a nightmare. I was just like, what is this is like, and so the next day, you know, we're just still dealing with this. We decided to go to the sentencing. I mean, we just decide. That's a weird way to phrase it. We decided to go to the sentencing. So we go to the sentencing, and you know, a lot of people are there. And the family of the victims were there, and there was this guy who was kind of like this frequent appearance of, you know, would like say like, this is the person you killed. Like, he had this like scrapbook of like pictures of her and all that. And you know, and it's like, well, I mean, I'm like, I can't argue against that. You know, why would I? You know, it's the truth. So it was just this wild thing being like, it was almost like the exact opposite of wedding. There was like people on my dad's side of the table here, and then there's the family of their side in these seats, and it's all this formality. He's going to accept his plea and get a 12-year sentence. But then somebody walked in, which I know you didn't. You said, I'm trying to indicate who this was. Maybe you remember who this was, but let's see, the estranged husband of the pastor's daughter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he just walks in, sits on their side.
Oh, okay, I do remember this. Okay.
Yeah. And we're just like, what is this about? Like I can't tell his story. If you ever have one of them randomly on this show, you could get it. But
it would be very interesting, to say the least.
Yeah.
He's nuts.
Yeah. And so like, we're like, wow, like he had like, I don't know how long ago he had like officially left the place, but it wasn't insanely long ago, but he had left, and like now he was like on this like vengeance thing, I guess. And so he just walked in and sat on their side, and it was just strange. But the judge was like, you got your sentence, but you have the weekend so you can get prepared for the funeral for the grandmother, which is my mother's mother. And so I was like, wow, like you can just do that, like all right. So we have a weekend. And so I remember us going to Galveston again. And I have like zero memory other than like a few family fights, but like other than that, I was just like, yeah, I don't know if it was very enjoyable that time. Maybe it was, I don't remember. But so I remember Monday school starting, and I'm like, well, I remember being like, hey, English teacher, I know we had a couple books to read this summer, but I think I have probably the best excuse you've ever heard for why I didn't. So here you go. And they're like, okay, fine.
Yeah, really. Oh my.
So Monday I think it was Monday we had school, and then so Tuesday was my grandmother's funeral. And there was a bunch of people there who didn't know my dad was going to prison the next day. Like family members from her side of the family and everything. But, it was just this very strange, like I remember the sky being like, I took it as like a hopeful thing. It was like this weird color. It was like, like the sky is usually blue, obviously, but it was like a blue that like felt almost like a painting. It was something, it was like, wow, it felt like a really spiritual moment. Like, oh, we will survive. And I still kind of take it that way, but it was just very like, of course it's gonna like, everything's just gonna feel so different. And then and then the next morning I had breakfast with my dad, and then he like went with my mom to turn himself in. And so it was just like, well, off to school, you're off to prison. So like all that happened. But then one more thing that happened, I mean, there's a lot of things that happened while he was in prison, obviously, but the one more thing specifically that was related to this was that turns out Mr. Estranged Man, who sat on the he like sold off some information to the local news, and there was like this whole investigation thing that happened, and they're just out of the blue, like it's like this rehab program claims that it has an 89% success rate. Well, why is one of its leaders going to prison? And there was my dad, and they like interviewed him. They interviewed him that day as he was turning himself in. So they're like, well, Mr. Gill, I was like, whoa, this is wild. But that's when, like, in the news report, which I've tried to find because it was online for a little bit, but I guess as time changes, they must have just lost it. But like, it was online for a while, and I was just like some of the things they said in there were fascinating, being like the stuff I mentioned before, where they like changed his like, what his official title was, and he even had like refuted that he like was doing a certain thing like at that time, like, but then why was he like preaching at the church and all that? And it was like, wow, my dad was on this. And then another big thing was that David was very much a part of that piece, and it was just saying that he's gotten a bunch of DUIs. I'm like, and he claims it's all back medication related. I'm like, well, then if this back medication is knocking you out cold, then why are you driving?
Yeah, that I believe it was Fox 26 News that did the report, and that airing that led a lot of people to leave. That's part of the reason me and my sister left. We saw that. Wow. Yeah, we saw that, and I was like, holy goodness. Now, in any kind of news media or whatever, so you got to just know, like, some of it may not be true or whatever, but I just knew in my heart that probably the majority of it was true. Maybe there might have been a little couple facts off or something, but I mean, just with everything else that had been going on, I mean, it just kind of seemed like probably a lot of it was true. That was nuts. That first time that I saw that, I talked about it on another podcast, but yeah. So he goes to prison for about, didn't he go for 7 years?
Yeah, just a little under 7.
So you guys, your family ends up staying there. How much longer? How many more years did y'all stay after he went?
Yeah. Well, it's if you ever interview anyone else from my family, they had a whole nother experience than I did after I left for college. But like, so my
That's right.
senior,
he went to college. I forgot.
Yeah. But my, obviously my senior year of high school, which, was just wild. Like I have the memories are like, I almost wonder if it's like not repressed memories as much as like I just didn't even like account for what I was going through so much that like my mind has been like wiped. I feel like my senior year of high school was kind of stolen from me in a way. Not obviously, everyone, people can have it much worse. Like I was alive and still able to go, but man, it was like, like, wow, my dad's in prison, and then a lot of people know about it, and I was never like lying about it or anything. If anything, I was like, the amount of time that had passed, I was just like confident that like, well, my dad has to do this, but he's already a better man, and he'll come out even better. And so I don't know. I almost, for a first little bit, almost took like some pride in it, like the Lord will provide, and I was fully expecting that. I thought like Straightway would take care of everything. And it seemed like at first that they might, at least from what I gathered. But the first weird thing that happened was, so my grandma had bought a house and then she passed. So she only had that house for like very little bit amount of time, maybe just a couple weeks even. But we still owned it or still had it. And something along the line led from us, I've never like known the full reasons. I'm sure she had good reasons, but like my mom, we basically said we have to move into that house. And I didn't really understand why. I was like, why would we leave Straightway? It's like, and so it ended up being like we moved into the city, and like even like I don't know, like maybe even in that time frame, enough had happened to be like things are not gonna be the same. But when I went to college, it just felt like there was all this family stuff drama that was happening back in the other place, and it's just like, I felt so much guilt for being like, oh, here I am, actually, like I went to film school like I've always wanted to do. Here I am chasing my dreams while everyone else is suffering or whatever. And so there was a couple times where I'm like, am I like sinning right now by like doing this? just and it's not like I was not like, look, I didn't drink after my dad's accident. I thought I was never going to drink again. I thought I was going to be just like my dad. I'm never going to risk it. I'm not going to get close to letting that happen. So I didn't drink at all in college. I didn't do anything. I was part of a bunch of Christian groups or whatever. So like I was not, I didn't go to college and like start sending it up. And like, I wasn't guilty because of that. Even in like this little cookie cutter version of me that was still out there, I still felt guilty of like, am I abandoning people to their fate? And there was a couple times where like, I kind of got the indication that some people felt that way. I don't think they felt that way like all the time, but maybe in their worst moments. But now in retrospect, I'm so grateful that happened. Because if I had been stuck there when this was going on, like it could have been a disaster. But
well, that's the best thing that could have happened for you, is getting out. That's what happened with some of the other kids. Like they got out and they went to college and they were able to get out in that avenue. So you go into film school and having the career that you've had so far. I mean, thank God that did happen. I mean, but that's what they would do. They would make you feel guilty if you at all wanted any kind of college or career or anything that was outside of that realm. Because they wanted you 100% to them, just serving to their cause. And so by taking off, it's like
yeah. But even
Yeah.
like at least through my first year of college, maybe even farther, like in my mind, I was like, even the Christian groups I was a part of was like, wow, this is a good start. Maybe it'll be as good as Straightway one day. So I was still drinking the Kool-Aid for a good while. Um, but but at some point in 2010, I was with my mom. I think it was the summer, and she basically said, "We're leaving." And I wish I can go back in my mind and just like reorchestrate all the steps that led to that. But when that happened, it wasn't like I didn't have any like doubt that that was wrong or anything. I was already like, yeah, we probably should. So yeah, so something along that line made it really apparent. I think it might have just been like it felt like they weren't doing anything to help us. So I was like,
Is
wait a
that what
minute.
is that what she said, or did she give a reason, or?
I think she would talk about things here or there about like people's attitudes and stuff, but like I remember like my youngest sister, maybe even Wesley too. Like Wesley had his own journey of like you know a lot of weird expectations, and like also being a little rebellious, which I think was probably a good thing. but
Mhm.
but certainly wasn't taken as a good thing at the time. And I think he kind of like left ish well before that, and was kind of like a black sheep labeled.
Mhm.
um and so I don't know, maybe that was part, in retrospect, was a little like thing that like led to me being okay with it, being like well, I don't know, like he hasn't burst into flames. Like you know we have our own interesting relationship, but
Are you talking about
uh
your brother or your dad?
yeah, my older brother.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And
He left, I think he left not too long after me. He actually, I really want to have him on because he's freaking makes me laugh so hard. But
mm,
he is actually one of the reasons I left, because I will never forget. We were sitting at Whataburger, just me and him, and he starts telling me all this stuff, and I'm like, no, no, I don't believe you. No, there's just no way. It's just, love believes the best. And I kept saying that to myself, but I was like, are you sure? Like, are you sure? And I was like, what? I think you're lying. Like, what? And he
like
started
was he telling you about like what my dad did, or just like
stuff
a lot of
about
things that happened at Straightway?
affairs that were going on with
Mm,
certain people, and just other stuff, because some of the stuff to do with some of the kids doing drugs or whatever it may be. And it was just stuff that I was just like, no, that would have never happened. I just, wait, what? Um, I mean, for me, there was quite a few things that had happened to make me actually leave. But that was one of the main things, seeing that video, and then me and your brother having that conversation, because we did get pretty close at one point. We became pretty good friends. And so we would talk about all this stuff. And it just got crazier and crazier. So had to get out. But I mean, I'm certainly glad that all of you guys did get out.
yeah.
Do you happen to know at all during the time when your dad was in prison? Because I know he was still kind of a part of Straightway being in prison, but at some point in there, he became was not a part of that anymore. Was there
Yeah.
something that happened to make that happen, or it kind of just with
Well,
time?
I remember one time he said, if they had taken care of my family, I'd probably still be there.
Really?
So I think it was just so him and my mom's relationship had like this really, you know, tense time at like a few years into it, and she was gonna divorce him, and but then they end up kind of like reconciling, and I think part of the that whole situation was just kind of her being like trying to be open about like this or that. But I remember my dad telling me like sometime after we had like left, that like he was like saying like, oh my, if Karen leaves me, like, you know, I don't want that to happen, but you know, you know, thinking on the positive side, like, I don't know, I could remarry or something like that, which he ended up doing, but that's another story. Anyway, he said that David was like, which I don't know how much you've discussed his much younger wife currently, but him saying like, yeah, you can get a nice young hot chick like me.
Oh my God. He would so say that. Oh my God.
Yeah, and I was just like, ugh. Like,
yeah.
I like that, you know, it's funny that you brought up the whole like my brother telling you like secrets. I was like so not someone who ever got told secrets. And I thought it's such a weird feeling of being like, I thought I was being the good kid. And now I'm like, now in retrospect, I'm like, was I? I mean, I wasn't narking on people because no one told me anything
you
to
were,
narc.
but you know, in the aspect of everything, you were a good kid. We all were, most of us were good kids. We were just stuck in a cult environment, you know, like a lot of us were serving in the church and like doing things that a lot of other kids weren't doing. We were actually did have a heart to help people. And I thought you were a pretty good kid. I think it just, along the way, things went to shit. So we finally saw the light and got the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it took you a little bit longer because you said you still were kind of thinking that straightway was okay or whatever. But yeah, it's just that it's so crazy. I am glad that all of your family is out now, and everybody has definitely had their struggles at time and stuff, but at least everybody's out.
Yeah. I always wonder if like there's part of me of like thinking like, is anyone of us gonna go back? But the fact that I hasn't even gotten close to that is like I remember watching anybody in my family. Yeah, like I remember watching a video that they posted not too long ago, and it was so weird, like hearing like leadership people talk, and I was like, did we have like an accent or something? Because they were talking so strange. I was just like, wow, was I, if we were all talking like it was like this weird twang to it, I was just like, like, come on, you're from New York, I thought. You can't, what are you talking like that for?
Oh, that's so funny. Oh my gosh. Wow. I'll have to go listen to some of that.
Yeah, it was so strange, but like yeah, I don't know. I guess I personally was like, you know, love believes the best, you know, that's a great way to put it. Like I was like, I believe the best, and also like that must be something, there must be something where it's like enough happened to where I was like, I just can't ignore it anymore, where it's like, wow, the fact that like it's so clear to me now that like a lot of, you know, things in life where it's like we think like, oh, things have changed now, all these people who are different are getting their rights and stuff. It's like, no, what's changed is that like we're no longer okay with just like letting like things go, like hiding the problems or hiding the things that aren't convenient to you. And I feel like Straightway was built so much on this idea that like somehow like mentally removing from our brains all of the things that happened that weren't perfect, and only acting like the perfect things happened. Like if something bad happened, it was almost like it didn't happen. It was like a nothing. It was like a fiction. You could throw it off. And I think blaming the devil for problems allows that to happen a lot, where you like, you know, like in a weird way, you're like, oh, it was a temptation from the devil, but therefore it almost like wasn't significant because it was something the devil did. So it's like you could
a lot of
off.
stuff. Yeah, a lot of stuff was that is an attack from the enemy, from Satan. Satan himself is is attacking us. I remember for like, oh my God, one of the main things we would pray. I hated those Tuesday morning prayer sessions that you had to be at 6 o'clock in the morning. I hated it because they would make us go. And it was supposed to be men's prayer, but us young teenage girls had to go. Okay. But they always prayed for like these finances to come in because they were always low on finances, they told us. But yet we were giving any money that we made to them. So we would always be praying for these finances. We will overcome. Yes, Jesus. Oh God. Oh Lord.
Yeah, I remember like there was just a period like near the end where it was just like every sermon or everything was all about like not giving enough. It's just like at some point it was just like, wow, we're still talking about not giving enough. I remember him being like, David being like, you know who had to pay for the bills this month? Grandma, which was his name. I was just like, yeah, Grandma had to pay for the bills. What a weird. I was just like, is that supposed to make me feel guilty? I'm like, well, what else is she gonna pay for?
Well, like we're getting paid. You know, the majority of people there were not making a lot of money. There might have been one or two that had their own business that had a good amount of money, but besides that, a lot of people there were not making a lot of money. And then if you happen to work for the center, then you barely got any money. You barely got paid anything. So they're expecting us to give all these funds, and you're like, with what? You're not paying me anything, and then you want me to give the majority of what you do give me back to you? It makes no sense. Like I can't even eat.
Yeah.
So many wrong things. That's too funny. Well, thank you so much for doing this. And I just know, one thing that I want to let everybody know out there, as much as people want to be angry, I guess, with your dad or the Kershke parents, or one thing I do want to say is there's also kids that were involved in this, like you. And you definitely, you and your brothers and sisters went through a lot of stuff as well. And I don't think some people maybe that were there realize that the kids also went through stuff. I don't know if that makes sense. Like they want to be angry with your dad or David or whatever, which that's, that you have every right to, but also realize that there were kids that were involved too, and that have been through a lot as well. And just seeing that, I mean, I know a lot of David's kids went through a lot of discipline that was pretty bad. And so kind of just realizing that and just having a little bit of grace, but yeah, thank you so much for doing this. And maybe we can come back on again, have a few of us on and talk about some other topics and everything. So yes, I just want to let everybody know out there, if anybody wants to be on or has a story similar doing with cults, you can send me an email at cultsandovercoming@gmail.com. And yes, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and end here. Bye.
Bye.